Hi, it's me, the YouTube gear psycho with the crazy collection that everybody loves to hate. And every time I post, I hear it all.
Sick trust fund, bro. Must be nice to have daddy's money. Can you believe his wife bought him all that gear?
So pretty much anytime that I post anything related to my insane gear collection on either social media or on YouTube, I get accused of being one or all of those things by people who just seem to be angry that I exist. But contrary to popular belief, none of those things are actually true. In fact, I grew up either poor or lower middle class for pretty much my entire life. And just about the time that my family was able to pull themselves out of poverty, my parents split and I ended up homeless for a portion of my early adult life. I spent about 6 months either sleeping in my car, couch surfing with friends, or actually renting someone's bedroom floor off of them. Luckily, I knew this person, so no weird stuff went down.
Maybe a little.
But long story short, I was stuck. I was a college dropout. I had no direction in life, and I didn't really find it for a long time because I worked low-wage jobs all the way up until my late 20s. But about that time, I kind of got sick of kind of just like fumbling my way through life without trying all that hard. So I went out, I found a good job, and I really started to turn my situation around. But the way that I mainly did that was I figured out how to not spend my money like an absolute moron, because I found a way to actually make my money work for me. So this massive, insane, highly overcompensating gear collection that you see behind me now, that you see in so many of my videos, I earned every piece of that gear collection myself. Nothing was bought for me. There is no trust fund. So today, I am going to share with you my story and my advice on how you can afford the gear of your dreams without being a trust fund kid, without being gifted a small loan of $1 million, and without being a trophy husband, which I so clearly deserve to be. Let's do it. All right, guys, hope you're doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, my name is Kyle, and welcome to Belligerent Studios. What I do here is I take all sorts of awesome high-gain related guitar equipment, I record it with a simple setup, and I give you the unfinished audio. That's actually probably a good way to describe it. The unprocessed audio on your end, but today, we are gonna do something completely different. Now, I've wanted to make this video for a really long time because one of the most common questions that I get asked on my YouTube channel, on my social media accounts is, how the hell do you afford all this stuff? Or in another way that people love to phrase it,
What do you do for a living?
and people always seem shocked to learn that I'm a full-time content creator, even with a somewhat small audience. But the thing is, I've been able to build everything that I am so incredibly fortunate to have through practicing discipline with spending, but also through making smart purchases that either pay off immediately or they pay off in the long run. So I am essentially going to try to break this down into some easily digestible bullet points for you guys to take away and hopefully use to improve your own situation. And a lot of this may seem like common sense, and that's because it is. But one thing that I have learned from following some financial channels here on YouTube is that when it comes to spending, people unfortunately don't actually have a lot of common sense these days. And that's partially because our society values looking or appearing wealthy on the outside as opposed to actually being wealthy. Because appearing wealthy and being wealthy are two very different things, and that usually entails two very different habits when it comes to spending or saving your money. I also think that unfortunately, the education and support systems that are in this country don't really properly prepare us for living life as responsible adults once we get out of high school. And in my opinion, that is not the fault of the educators or even the school systems themselves. That blame is placed solely on the shoulders of the government for just increasingly slashing the education budget. But before I get too deep down that rabbit hole, that is a subject for somebody who's far more educated than I am, and for somebody who actually talks about that stuff on YouTube and knows what they're talking about. It's definitely not for the guy who makes fart jokes in every video and plays single-digit IQ hardcore riffs. So with all of that said, I have curated 6 different points, and we are gonna go through them one by one. Let's dive in. Point number 1. Find cheaper alternatives to the things that you need but don't necessarily want. I'm talking about the things that you basically have to buy. You don't have the option in order to accomplish certain tasks or to stay alive. You have to buy certain things. What does that mean in terms of guitar gear? Cables, stands, if you're a gigging guitarist, cases. These are all things that guitarists need, but none of us really want to spend money on this stuff because it's not sexy, it's not glamorous, and it's not really that fun. But if you're a savvy shopper, you can find ways to purchase those items for much, much less. If you know what you're doing, you know what you need, and you know where to look. Because a lot of the time, there are cheaper alternatives to the items that you need that have the same or similar specs, that do the job exactly the same, but cost you much less. One easy example that comes to mind for me is audio interfaces. If you want to record audio, you pretty much are gonna have to buy one of these. If all you're doing is simple demo recording, voiceover, or even recording to mix in the box, buying a super expensive prosumer interface isn't really gonna make that much of a difference for you. It's certainly not gonna make a huge difference in the quality of your recordings. For example, I started out with a PreSonus 1818 VSL 8-channel interface that I only paid $120 for, and I just happen to still have it. But even though I had this interface and it was serving every function that I needed it to serve, it was doing the job basically exactly as I needed it to, I still found myself lusting over something like a Focusrite Claret Plus interface. It just seemed like a more premium option, and me being the extreme tone nerd that I am, thought,
well, a more expensive interface is going to have a lot more premium sound to it, right?
Well, it does have some upgraded features and functions over the PreSonus, but in reality, it's just a much more expensive version of the thing that I already had that I paid next to nothing for. And in fact, it's for sale if you'd like to buy it. So even though the Claret does have some upgraded features and functions over my PreSonus, it made absolutely zero difference in the quality of my recordings. So therefore, after spending a whole lot more money on the Focusrite, I literally got zero benefit from it. This taught me a hard lesson, but one that I am very happy that I was able to learn, even if it came at my own expense, and that is, expensive doesn't necessarily mean better. Another example is the microphone that I'm using to record this very video, and the company who is actually sponsoring this video, MAONO, who sent out their PD200W wireless desktop microphone for me to check out. Now, a lot of folks who want to start a podcast go straight for something like the SM7B or the EV RE20 because those are the standard microphones in that space. And they're great microphones, but the truth is, 99% of people who are doing podcasting or voiceover don't actually need these mics at all. The MAONO PD200W is a great alternative for a few reasons. Not only is the PD200W a dynamic XLR microphone that can be used with a standard audio interface, but it's also a wireless or hybrid microphone with a long battery life, built-in noise canceling, and comes right out of the box with its own mic stand and shock mount. And you get all of this for 99 bucks. So not only do you get your standard XLR microphone to use with an audio interface if that's how you want to roll, but you also get a mic that works solely on USB, which means you don't even need an interface. You also get a totally wireless microphone that works on tablets and phones, something that those other microphones aren't going to be able to do at all. And on top of all this, the PD200W comes with built-in noise cancellation. And on the wireless side of things, the PD200W is advertised as having 60 hours of wireless battery life, which means you can record multiple videos, podcasts, or voiceovers without ever having to worry about charging it. So to check out the MAONO PD200W for yourself, I'll drop some links for the purchase pages that have all of the specs listed out down in both the description and the comments of this video. Now, this doesn't just go for audio gear or equipment, it literally applies to everything in life. One thing I've noticed is that so many people are totally okay with spending $5 to $10 at Starbucks every single morning for a coffee and a breakfast sandwich, and they can easily make themselves a better cup of coffee and a better, healthier breakfast at home for much, much less. And it's gonna be faster too because you don't have to wait in those stupidly long lines. And I can keep going with these examples until my teeth fall out of my face, but you guys get the point. Point number 2, don't buy things that you don't need. This may seem like a very obvious thing, but a lot of people have a really hard time grasping this point. A lot of people feel the need to keep up with the Jones, and that is because our society is designed this way. It's designed to keep us constantly wanting, constantly consuming, and constantly spending our money on stuff that frankly most of us don't need at all. A prime example is something that almost all of us have these days. It's a cell phone. Every single year, all the major players come out with a brand new upgraded version of essentially what's been the same thing for how many years now? I mean, for real, how much technological advancement has been made in cell phones in the past 7 to 8 years that most of us actually even use? Now, I personally generally try to go in cycles of at least 3 years with my phone. I mean, here's my last phone. It still works just fine, but unfortunately, as you guys can see, I smashed the screen and the back camera kind of stopped working, so I kind of need that doing my job day to day because I do use my phone camera quite a bit. So I was kind of forced to upgrade, but this is an iPhone 15 Pro Max. I've had it for almost 3 years now, and nope, that math is wrong. I've had it for 2 years, but with this one, I've actually protected it properly, and I don't see any reason why I can't get another 3 to 5 years out of this phone as long as Apple doesn't Apple and completely nerf it or reduce the battery capacity or whatever it is that they love to do to these things in order to get you to buy the next model. Another example is buying a new car when you don't need one. So many people, as soon as they pay off a car, start looking at their next car. And I do remember when I was a young adult, I attended some weird seminar for a pyramid scheme. Don't worry, I did not partake in it. I didn't know what it was going to be until I got there, and I no longer talked to the person who tricked me into going. But one thing that they did say that resonated with me is a lot of Americans are car poor, and that basically means that they spend all their money on constantly upgrading or trading in their car for the latest, newest model. But this also goes for just buying things that you want, but will probably never use and definitely don't need. Again, man, I am guilty of a lot of these points, and it's stuff that I've tried to move away from over the years. I bought a brand new racing wheel and a huge 49-inch monitor, this big curved monitor, because I thought that I really wanted to get into racing sims and stuff. I've never even used the racing wheel, frankly, and I'm just going to try to turn around and get rid of it and hopefully get most of my money back out of it. But it was something, even when I was buying, I knew that I probably shouldn't buy because I probably wasn't going to use it. I'm sure you can think of at least a few examples where you've done this and you probably regret it. So when you're going to make a purchase, don't beat yourself up over it forever. Just really think, am I going to use this? Do I really need this? And if not, that's money that could go into whatever piece of gear that you are dreaming of buying. And I think we could all agree that that would be money much more well spent. Good money spent. Point number 3, and this does apply directly to guitar gear. Don't fall for the trap of premium or professional gear. Now, I know the whole point of this video is how to afford the gear of your dreams, essentially meaning how do you afford expensive gear or how do you afford multiple pieces of expensive gear. But in reality, the gear that is marketed towards us as professional or premium typically doesn't do anything that mid-tier or even some of the entry-level gear does. Why did that sentence feel like it made no sense? One thing that I see very, very commonly in the guitar groups is people who kind of criticize lower tier or mid-tier gear, people who play that stuff live, or, they talk about it being oh, this is as good as I'll ever need it to be. You get those people who are up on their high horse that come in and attack that person, and they're like,
well, try gigging with that for a few months and come back and tell me what you think.
As if for some reason the $800 guitar that you bought is not going to hold up for more than a few gigs versus their $3,000 Les Paul, where if they accidentally look at it wrong, the headstock snaps off. What did I just say?
The headstock snaps off.
It's okay. Don't get your panties too twisted. I love Les Pauls too, okay? It's okay. But for real, most of the boutique or the super expensive gear in this market, those things are all basically just marketed towards people who have a lot of expendable income. But just because that insanely boutique and exclusive type of guitar gear exists, doesn't negate the law of diminishing returns. What is the law of diminishing returns? It means once you get to a certain point in, anything that you're buying, there basically is a point or a marker on that pricing scale where the more you spend, you get less and less benefit out of it. Hopefully I'm explaining that right. But essentially, if you buy an $800 guitar, a brand new $800 guitar in today's market, you basically are getting a certain level of quality that is going to be absolutely fine for most people. And once you really start spending more and more money, the additional quality that you get for that additional cost doesn't really equal out anymore. It kind of gets less and less as you go up that pricing scale. Now, I do believe in supporting certain brands over others, like definitely support the people who make original circuits versus the companies that just come in and copy them and undercut them without really changing much. I'm not saying go buy from those cheap companies that are basically stealing intellectual property from the people who are actually building and innovating in our market. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is there is a certain extent to which you can spend your money where you're really going to get a great bang for your buck. And after that certain point in certain categories, it's no longer going to make a whole lot of sense unless you are that person that just has a bunch of expendable income, or you're a person like me who is psychotic and you just love blowing every last penny that you have on gear because it's fun. Moving 100 cabs is fun. You can absolutely gig, you can absolutely record, you can do pretty much anything that you need to do with much cheaper gear than I think most people would try to lead you to believe. So keep that in mind. Point number 4, and this is something that I have really lived by for my entire life, even before I got into guitar gear, and that is buy low, sell, or trade high. Now, even when I was younger and I basically had no money to speak of, I was always trying to find a way to make money from the things that interested me. No matter what my hobby has been, I have always looked for deals on things that I am interested in. That way I could buy it, maybe check it out for myself a little bit, or maybe put a little bit of work into it to turn around and sell it for more than I paid for it. And when it came to guitar gear, I found that with musical items, people a lot of the time are willing to let things go for a lot less than they paid for them if they're in a pinch or if they just don't want to deal with reselling it. So therefore, I was able to go out and find deals on the gear that I wanted. Now, initially, I was finding those deals because I wanted to get the gear for myself, of course, because I'm a hoarder. I have mental problems and I want everything. But once I kind of lost interest in a certain piece of gear and found myself like lusting after the next thing that I was interested in, I realized, hey, I only paid $350 for this SG Faded and they're all selling for like $600 on Reverb. Why don't I try to put it up for like $500, give somebody a good deal, and then I can take that extra money and just reinvest it into my next piece of gear. And that turned into a cycle. I would constantly find deals for myself when I was ready to turn things around. A lot of the time I would trade up. So I would put something up for sale. Somebody would offer me a trade. And if the trade was more valuable than the item that I was trying to sell, I would take that trade. And then I would kind of just snowball that into the next piece of gear. And frankly, that's how I built most of what you guys see behind me. That was a key strategy for me. It takes patience. It takes knowing the market. It takes good negotiating skills. So this is something that you will get better with over time as you do it, but it can be an invaluable skill to have, especially if you're looking to build up your gear collection or maybe trade up to a piece of gear that you don't have the money for right now. But if you work hard and you get some good deals, you can kind of work your way towards it over time. Point number 5, and this ties in with the last point pretty closely, and that is always have cash ready. And the reason that you always want to have cash ready is because you never know when you're going to find an insane deal. And if you don't have cash ready to jump on that deal and kind of capitalize on it, you're kind of screwed. But more importantly, and this is probably what I should have led this point off with, if you don't have money and you have some sort of crisis, you have some sort of emergency, maybe your car breaks down, and maybe you're a homeowner and something breaks down at your house and you have to have somebody come out and replace something and you don't have the money on hand, so you either have to put it on a credit card that has high interest, or you have to take out a loan to fix whatever it is with your house. God forbid, that would really suck, but it does happen to people all the time. You are inevitably going to pay more for that same item and that same service because you did not have the cash on hand to pay for it up front, and therefore you have to finance it. And financing anything, as far as I'm concerned, is just, other than a house, is just a losing deal for you, because paying interest just means that you're paying extra on an item. Had you had the money on hand when you bought it, you wouldn't have to pay that extra for it. And that is kind of the focus of this point over, swiping deals and stuff. That is part of it. But in reality, financing something pretty much always means that you're going to pay more for it. And that kind of brings me around to some of the other points that I've already touched on, in that if you're being really dumb and you're buying things that you don't need at all and using financing to do it, not only are you wasting your money on stuff that you don't need, but you're financing it, which means you're gonna pay even more for it in the long run. So, kind of wrapping some of these points together, don't buy stuff that you don't need, and definitely don't finance it unless it's an absolute necessity. You probably shouldn't buy it at all. So this brings me to my last point, and as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most important points. Never buy new. This absolutely and most importantly goes for guitar gear, but it also goes for pretty much everything. That iPhone 15 Pro Max that I showed you guys, I didn't buy this new. I bought this refurbished on Amazon, and because I bought it refurbished, it came with an extended warranty automatically, and yet I still paid a few $100s less than buying it new when it was still a new model. But that's just one example. When you're talking about guitar equipment, and especially like mid-tier import stuff, like say an LTD EC1000. If you buy an LTD EC1000 new these days, I mean, depending on the finish that you get, it can be around $1,500 new. Well, LTD EC1000s go for $500 to $700 used all day long. So if you buy that guitar new, think of all the value that you lost in buying that thing new when you inevitably turn it around to sell it. Now, I know I'm gonna get a ton of people in the comments to say,
Well, I never sell any gear.
You're in the minority. Trust me, musicians are notorious for buying gear and selling it a couple months later, sometimes a couple years later, but more than likely, you will sell that piece of gear at some point. So if you buy it new and you are concerned with, saving money or the value of that item at all, you're gonna take a huge hit on the turnaround of that guitar gear. And let's face it, if you're a musician, there aren't a whole lot of situations where you need to buy something right this moment, unless you are a musician as a professional, or unless you're somebody like me who, say, records bands, because I have my own little studio here and I record bands. If something that is necessary for me to do that, like breaks or goes down, and the only way that I can get it in time, to basically fulfill my obligations to this band is to buy it new, that's like the only way that I would ever buy a piece of equipment new. And frankly, that's never happened to me before. But in most cases, if you have a little patience and you really know where to look, you start scouring Facebook Marketplace, you start scouring Guitar Center's used website, you start scouring Sweetwater's used gear exchange, you'll be able to find that piece of equipment probably a lot faster than you think. It really just depends on your diligence. How bad do you want that piece of equipment? How bad you want that piece of equipment will pretty much translate into how much work you're willing to put into searching for said piece of equipment. But either way, it's gonna be worth your time because most pieces of equipment devalue very, very fast when you buy them new. So that is one very, very important thing to keep in mind. That is one way, especially if you're a habitual gear trier outer, such as myself, such as my buddy Jason Howell, such as a lot of people that watch my channel or participate in a lot of the same gear groups that I do. That is how you can try out all this gear and not lose a bunch of money on the turnaround because you bought it used, you looked for a good deal, you were patient, and when it comes time to kind of move that piece of gear on for the next thing, or God forbid, move that piece of gear on to fund an emergency in another area of your life, you're not gonna lose your whole entire ass on it because you didn't buy it new. Can't stress the importance of that enough. And as far as I'm concerned, that is one of the most important points on this list, if not the most important. Those are my 6 points. Those are the 6 ways in which I have been able to afford such a ridiculously awesome and blessed gear collection. And you can do the same thing too, because I started collecting this stuff when I wasn't making a whole lot of money. I just put all of this stuff that I outlined into effect for myself, and it paid dividends. So with that being said, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about the points that I made here? I am sure I'm going to get accused of being an investor and not a player or whatever. Go ahead and huff your own farts in the comments below if that's how you feel. I know what I want and I know how to get there, and all I want to do is share these points with you guys so that you guys can get there too, because I genuinely want to see you guys succeed. I want to see people be happy. When people are constantly messaging me about gear and saying, I want to be able to get this, but I don't think I'm ever going to be able to afford it. Hopefully these points help get you there, because I want you guys to get the gear that you want. So yeah, leave those comments down below. Again, if you guys want to check out this microphone that I've been recording this video on, I will drop links down below in the description and in the comments. This is actually a sick mic. I've been using it for a few things lately. I'm genuinely impressed with it for the price point. But yeah, check those links down below. Thanks to MAONO for sponsoring this video, making it possible. Thanks to you guys for your support. Hit the like button if you liked the video. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I'm gonna get the hell out of here. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time. Hopefully holding your piece of dream gear. Goodbye. Wow, that was a perfect circle.